have you ever been, because I've asked this of other gold medal winners, have you ever been at a dinner party where they don't know who you are, they don't know your background, and someone's being a little bit egotistical, and you just got that gold medal kind of in your, not really physically in your pocket, but you kind of got it mentally in your pocket. Have you ever had to kind of pull out the gold medal just to kind of shut them up?
No,
oh, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I keep my mouth shut quite often. I had parents either in youth sports talk about like their kids, and I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, or like how the sports work, I'm like, okay. Especially like, and this sounds super weird, but I find it more like if I'm sitting down, like if I stand up and they're like, wow, she's 6'3", and like, oh, maybe she played a sport or something. But like, there's so many times where I keep my mouth shut, like, oh my gosh, can you believe what this guy's saying or this woman's saying? Like,
typically
crazy,
a guy, probably.
Right? Oh
yeah, I love it.
It's Kirk Herbstreit.
Oh, Sean McVay.
Kerry Walsh Jennings.
Sterling McGowan. Greg Gazan.
John Isner.
Ryan Howard.
Greg McElroy.
Got Drew.
Chris Sale.
Mark DeRosa.
Cade Klubnik. Derek White.
Reese Davis.
Marty Smith.
Before we jump into today's episode, I want to tell you about Booster. If you got kids playing sports in middle school or high school, Booster is the easiest way to raise money for their team. From uniforms and equipment to travel expenses, Booster makes fundraising simple and fun for schools and sports programs. Check them out at choosebooster.com. That's choosebooster.com, or just click the link in our description to see how your team can boost their fundraising this season.
Welcome back to Peer Athlete. I am Jeff, along with Britt and Brad. How we doing, fellas?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Great.
I'm excited for today, guys, because my partner, Brian Anderson, who also calls TNT tennis for TNT, and they did Roland Garros, got to work alongside this great lady. And we all know I can introduce all the stats. World number one, 3 Grand Slam singles champions. Also, I love to add this since we're from Atlanta, won the Olympic medal here in '96
That's right.
in Hotlanta. But more important than that, her and her husband, John, have 4 kids that play a high level and just can't wait to get her opinion. So without that, Lindsay Davenport, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
Well, first off, I know you have been in China. So kind of tell us, Paris, and then, of course, the Open, China. What has your summer been?
It's so funny. Tennis with the calendar is so cyclical. And even though I quit playing in 2008, segued into broadcasting, and now coach the U.S. Olympic team and Billie Jean King Cup team. So always kind of on the road, it seems like. I try to keep a pretty manageable schedule, but certain times of the year, the tennis comes back to the United States in the summer. So that's always a really exciting time if you're a tennis fan and from the States. And then our team competition took us to Shenzhen about a week or two after the US Open. So I hadn't been back to China since the Olympics in 2008. So it was pretty awesome, actually, and eye-opening to see how much change has gone in there. So always trying to balance where I'm going and the schedule, and still get to experience new things at 49 years old.
I got to ask you, how is the food in China?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm really, because I'm such a food guy that I've never been.
I've been to China.
So-
it is not PF Chang's. I can tell you
I've been to
that much.
Shenzhen. No, thank you.
I loved it, I have to say, but I'm a huge breakfast person. If you've ever gone to some of these hotels, their breakfast buffets are amazing. So I would sit down at breakfast for a long time, but I hadn't been since I was there long before COVID. So I didn't know really what to expect. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. I managed the food. Breakfast was definitely the best meal of the day.
Lindsay, you mentioned, or Jeff mentioned the Olympics already. And I want to ask you a couple of questions about the Olympics. You won gold here in Atlanta in '96. And, Olympics going on now with players. What is the feel for you as a player, Olympics compared to Grand Slams? And what's the feel today? Do players excited about playing the Olympics? What is that dynamic?
For a tennis player, it's so different than a lot of the other sports. So I always felt like the Olympics were very individual and super personal to the players. I've talked to some players that kind of just shrug their shoulders and are like, I don't know if I'm going to go. And for me, it was like the biggest thing. My father was an Olympian in 1968 in volleyball. I was 8 years old when the Olympics came through Los Angeles, where I grew up, and both my parents worked the volleyball event at the LA Olympics. So I was around it then. I couldn't even believe I made the team. So, I grew up, if you ask my parents, if you ask my family, that is by far my biggest accomplishment. And then if you maybe talk to another player who maybe didn't grow up in that kind of environment or had that growing up, they look at it a little differently. The schedule is so tough for these tennis players in terms of trying to make it. For instance, the Paris Olympics, they had gone from clay in Paris in early June back to grass in England in late June, early July. Then they had to go back to Paris on clay, then back to hard for the US Open. So sometimes that plays into it. If that's the case, LA 28 is going to be hugely popular with the tennis players because it's in the States on the same surface going in the US Open. I think if every player looks at it differently. I honestly, I look back, I can't believe I was a part of 3 Olympics. It seems like the greatest thing of all time.
Compare, and I don't know if it's different back in the day, 96, or it is now, but is it more difficult to win a Grand Slam or is it more difficult to win an Olympic gold medal?
Oh man. I mean, at least you always say, right, you get 4 chances every year to win a Grand Slam. So I guess if you're really good, the odds are more in your favor that you're going to catch fire during a Grand Slam tournament. You've got more opportunities. The Olympics and playing for your country, I always feel brings out an emotion in athletes that maybe they've never experienced before, that may be harder to kind of handle or deal with. So I think the Olympics, I think you don't get that many opportunities. There's a huge amount of pride and obviously nationalism when you go into the Olympics. I felt white. It was crazy going through it in my experiences, and I always feel like I was really lucky to be left standing with the gold.
Well, Lindsay, that's I remember that. Well, we all do. It was it was hot here in Atlanta.
It was Stone Mountain, wasn't it?
It was Stone Mountain.
Yeah, Stone Mountain, exactly.
Yeah, it was cool.
My sister, I got an older brother and sister, and my dad took us each to one event. So my sister actually picked tennis. So she came and saw the match. My brother picked baseball, and I picked ping pong, man. I was 12 years old, and I was all about the ping pong. And me and my dad watched the semifinals in ping pong. It was incredible.
That's so good. I remember I have a sister who's 16 years older. So when I was 8, she was 24 during those Olympics in LA. And they took us to indoor cycling into like the velodrome. And it was like a qualifying round. But I remember seeing these bicyclists just going around and it's tilted like insane, which you can't normally see on TV. And I remember just like couldn't believe it. It's so funny, the other sports that you're exposed to during the Olympics. I think flag football might have gotten added to LA 28.
Which it should.
But I thought I read that.
It's the fastest growing women's sport. It's absolutely blowing up.
How fun would that be to go?
My daughter plays. She loves it, man.
Totally.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So good.
That'd be cool. Well, Lindsay, we want to jump in a little bit and hear about your story growing up. You grew up in a volleyball family and you became a world #1 tennis player. So what did that look like growing up? Tell us about starting out with tennis, and you had sisters that played volleyball. Did you play volleyball? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, my story, every tennis player has this crazy unique journey. My parents literally tried everything they could to get me out of tennis, which, you look at it and you see some players, their parents had them pick up a racket at 2 or something. My dad was very into athletics. He had 3 daughters, which he pushed very hard into sports. It was just our way of life in our house. But you didn't start volleyball till you were a little later, maybe like, especially in the 80s, you didn't really start it till you're 12 or 14. I mean, now they have club teams 10 and under, and it's a much bigger deal. So I started with other sports, but I mean, I was like 6 when I was playing a lot of tennis. I remember going into first grade and already thinking I was like a tennis player. And that's all I wanted to do. So my parents just kept putting me more in after school clinics. I'd come back and hit against the garage, and my dad would like yell at me because I was ruining the garage. They were, the weekend spent at tennis tournaments with 3 daughters. They were like, wow, this is a lot. And 2 times, at least I remember 2 times, my mom taking me to like volleyball club tryouts. And, I'm probably like 13. I'm like, Mom, like, what are you doing? Whatever. I'm like top 5 in the nation or whatever it was at the time. But I was also 6'2" at like 14 years old.
Wow.
So my dad was 6'8". We had a lot of height in the family. So everyone just assumed I would segue into volleyball. And I loved playing tennis. A lot of tennis players, a lot of people, athletes in individual sports, I always feel like are wired just a little differently. I could sit in my room and just read all day long. I didn't need a lot of people around. I was friendly and obviously had friends, but I wasn't like looking forward to sleepovers or going to the mall. I just kind of was in my own world. And I enjoyed playing an individual sport, team sports. It just didn't have the same allure that it had for other young girls that were playing sports. So I kind of just kept with the tennis, and it just kept spiraling till I would get to a higher level. And honestly, my parents didn't even know how to handle it. I was fortunate the USTA kind of stepped in and helped kind of guide me, but it's 15 when I played the US Open main draw for the first time. And so it kind of just came out of our control. And my path was kind of decided for me at a really young age. I was happy about it, but for a lot of other athletes, it doesn't happen that early or that seamlessly. And we kind of just adjusted every year that we went on in junior sports, and then that transition to the pros.
That's crazy. 15 years old, you played your first Grand Slam. Wow.
Yeah.
What was that? I was going to say, what was that like? Like, you're in 9th grade in New York City, right? Like,
Totally.
what?
I
Like,
had
was it?
played I'd played the junior tournament before, which at least is on like the same grounds and on the back courts. But I had won the 18 and under nationals, and my birthday's in June, so I had literally just turned 15. And so the winner of the 18 and under nationals, it's like an automatic wild card to the US Open. I'd never played a pro tournament. I had never even, I'd watched pro tennis, but it was like the week before some other tournament gave me a wild card so I could play my first pro event. Went into the US Open, and it was like so overwhelming. It's like I definitely didn't belong there. I guess I had earned it. I think I did win like 6 games. So I didn't quite like totally embarrass myself, but it was overwhelming for me. I was raised to be an athlete, but I wasn't raised to be like one in the world, or this is your path, or you can do this. And had a lot of insecurities, which I think a lot of girls do growing up and being in sports. So I remember just being like, this is way too much for me to handle. But at some point it became a little bit more comfortable for me. But that was a lot at 15.
So Lindsay, I read I saw you being interviewed, and you talked about self-confidence was a struggle early on. How did you, I mean, it's a struggle for tons of kids. How did you overcome that? How did you deal with that, and how did you overcome it?
It was so hard. And even when I was doing really well, it still always felt like a struggle. I think some people like naturally have it, and other people, it maybe takes some time. If someone had told me I was going to be one in the world in my teenage years, I would have been like, yeah, right. Like, I can't even, you're crazy. And even though I was like playing pro tennis, I even think I got to the top 10 at like 17 or somewhere at 17 or 18. It still didn't feel like I could be the best. It took a little while for me to get there. It was probably, my coach, when I was like 30 something, told me this one time. I was 21 years old. It was 1997. I remember actually this. It was a tournament in Philadelphia, and I won my match, and we went out to eat. I think I had to go play doubles later, but for winning that match, I was going to get to 2 in the world. It's crazy. And I said to my coach, who had been with me since I was 16, I said, like, I can't believe we're like going to be like 2 in the world. This is so crazy. And then I guess I said, but gosh, I look at the players around me and I think I'm better than they are. And, just went back eating, and he didn't say anything. He didn't really acknowledge it, but he told me later it was like one of his most proud moments, that taking someone that had the talent, but maybe not the belief, and getting them to that spot really on their own, not just telling me, oh, you're going to be one, you're going to be great. He was like, oh, I knew you were on your way then. So I always look back at that, like I laugh, because it didn't seem like a big deal, but apparently it was a kind of a pivotal moment in my career.
Lindsay, you obviously are incredibly physically talented and athletically talented, but what do you think your number one asset was that enabled you to be so successful, other than just your physical tools?
One thing I actually regret the most is I never worked with a mental coach, and I was very stubborn, obviously very competitive, and that helped me a lot. Like, you're not losing this, like, let's go. But there were also days where I struggled with just staying positive, and the positive self-talk and things I'd preach to my own kids now was not natural for me. It didn't happen. I think that actually probably could have helped me more. But when I lost, and I think most top players are like that, or they used to be like this, it was like debilitating for me for days, 2 or 3 days. I remember one time in Berlin losing, and I don't think I left my hotel room for like 36 hours. Took losses way too hard, but I think inevitably that's what drove me to then want to not experience that again. Obviously there's a certain mental health component to it that I'm sure wasn't perfect for me back in the 90s, but that's ultimately what would get me back out there and like, God, I'm not losing to this person again. Like, let's go. I worked my way through it, but I think that the fear of losing and how hard I was on myself with that kind of drove me on those days where maybe I didn't really feel like practicing at 100% or didn't really feel like going out there.
We talk a lot on here with individual sports, tennis, golf, about burnout, right? You hear a lot about that. I'm sure you see a lot of it. What were some things that you were able to do, or your mom and dad did with you, that kind of keep you from getting burnout?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were amazing because, it was like for my dad, it was non-negotiable. I was not leaving my normal high school. Like, so here I was, like 10 in the world, playing pro tennis, and I was going to like regular school, graduated from Marietta Valley High School. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah, so they really kept it super normal. We didn't really ever talk about my tennis at home. I had 2 other sisters, so it wasn't like, oh, let's just talk about Lindsay. And so they definitely tried to keep my childhood as normal as possible, and experiencing how other maybe players grew up. It was definitely much different than some of my peers out on tour. The other thing was I could always take a break. I did always feel, especially with either the people working with me or my family, like they really didn't care how I did. Obviously, they're nervous and wanted me to do well. But the only thing I ever got in trouble for was my attitude when I was little, if I acted poorly. My dad was an athlete, but he also then became a referee, like rep volleyball in the Olympics or NC2As in college. And like, we were not allowed to talk back to referees or umpires at all. That was the only time when one time I was giving one like a little bit of sass. That didn't go over well at all. But I just never felt like that. If I felt like I needed time off, I could always take it. I try to take a lot of what my parents were like with us, with my kids. Obviously, you try to throw out the stuff that maybe wasn't the best, but I had a lot of good, and they were dealing with a situation that isn't normal. And I felt like they did a really nice job of our family core unit. So when I was playing pro tennis, like if I didn't feel right, like I wasn't going to go to Europe for 4 or 5 weeks. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this. So where the next time I enter a tournament, I feel like I could win it.
Lindsay, I want to geek out on a junior tennis question for you. You talk about a fear of losing, and we talk a lot across all sports about really young kids focusing on development more than winning, and learning to build a foundation. A lot of kids in the tennis world, when they're really young, they'll push, they'll do anything not to make an error because they don't want to lose. and it kind of stunts their development. You're known with your game for going for it. I mean, ripping the ball. And were you always like that? And what did you do with your kids in from a development standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's experienced junior tennis, it is such a crazy world. So, my husband and I both lived it. We then lived it again with my son. I have three daughters as well, and they all learned to play. They all played a tournament or two, and they all were like, "This is not for me." But it is so crazy, right? You have to assume so much responsibility at such a young age when you're playing tennis. It's honestly the only junior sport, and with four kids and their different interests, we've experienced, I think, just about every sport. It's the only sport that's like at 8 or 9 years old, like, here are the balls, go figure it out. Like, it's a complex scoring system. You're calling lines. You're like, and like, really, no one's going to go help them out there. And then you've got to manage, the winning or loss falls really solely on your shoulders. And one big thing I've always done was, I mean, so cliche, but let's not make excuses. One bad call or one missed shot isn't really the whole match. So you have to look at the sum of all parts out there. I had a pretty one-dimensional game only because I knew what my strengths were and I was well aware of what my weaknesses were. A lot of times, like, you have to be super honest if you're in an individual sport. There's no use of like bluffing it. Was I the fastest player? Gosh, no. Was I going to be in trouble if I had to go play defense? Yes. So I had one coach that was like, how do we get you to play so you never have to play defense? And the mentality was like, I'd rather see you make errors than just see you kind of like get bullied all over the court. Like, you want to be the player doing that. So that was ingrained in me from a really young age. And so I think it gave me a little more clarity and a little bit more freedom on some of the bigger occasions in matches. But certainly the moment can take over at any time. And you're like, wait, I know I'm not supposed to be doing that, but my head and my arm are not exactly working together here. Trying to keep young players, developing players with a more open mind, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you lose this match. Like, how did you play? But it's hard. I mean, I have a son that's gone through it, and then there's been matches like, I'm like, really, dude, you didn't want to like try and come in once. But in their kind of world, they're like, if you win, it's great. If you lose, it's terrible. And just trying to change that mentality has been like a huge talking point in our house for, gosh, like over a decade.
There is one person and one person only who will define your kid's dreams, and that's your kid.
If you want something, like, you have to work for it.
Your ability to counter a weapon is paramount to your game development.
Or just losing perspective on what youth sports are really about.
Teach your kid the value of winning, but not at all costs.
Get a lot of questions on when an athlete's to start strength training.
If your athlete follows my protocol, they are going to have better energy than ever before.
It can't come to you when you're born and say, you got character. You got to build that.
You can win, but if you're not really impacting lives, I think you lose.
I love where you're going with that, talking about you and John, your husband. So kind of the things you learned, obviously, from your parents, you as an athlete, like, how are you and John with your kids? Like, what do you really coach for them or come alongside them?
Yeah, I mean, our kids, we always said, they're the absolute toast when it comes to like junior sports. So, my father was an Olympic athlete and then became a referee. My mom has been in the organizational side of junior volleyball since I was like 4 years old. So she sees it more from an administrative standpoint. My husband's father was a coach at USC in Southern Cal men's tennis for over 20 years. So then we had a coach's perspective. Like, we kind of see it from every lens, and every grandparent was like, giving their side to kind of what's important. So, for our kids, John he's always been the one that has been maybe more like on court and been the really patient one, and really will take them at any time. I think it was like 6:30 last night. He took our 11-year-old to go play volleyball and she decided Sunday night that I'm like, really? We had all weekend. But he's like, yeah, of course I'll take him. I'm always around. He definitely possesses a little bit more patience. We're well aware, like when they're competing, if you are an athlete, the chances are other parents are like always kind of watching you, how you behave. So we say very little when our kids are playing. We don't even try and cheer, just to make it like kind of just mellow out there for everybody involved. So it's an interesting time for our kids. They give us directions also, right? Like, okay, don't stand here. My kids are older now. So now we like embarrass them, it feels like. It's interesting though. It's different in tennis. We know too much about tennis when we're watching. So we have to really kind of bite our tongues when my son plays. So that's a little harder sometimes, because you're like, oh man, we worked on that all last week. Like, where is that shot? But we handle it pretty well. We haven't gotten thrown out anywhere or gotten in any trouble yet.
So Lindsay, your son, you just said, is a freshman at Stanford, and he was a top junior in the world. You can kind of share some of that. It seems like on the tour now, if you look at a lot of the top players, and I don't know what the stats are, but it feels like it's like 50-50, those who go to college versus those who go right on the tour. What were y'all's thoughts in guiding him in that? What is your advice to high level players out there today as they think about college or tour and grind it out? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. If you go to the highest level of juniors, I feel like they all want to be pros. That's what kind of drives them. That's maybe what separates them from being, top 20 in the world or top 30, whatever it is, top 50 in the world in the 18 and under juniors to the rest, because there's something that really kind of drives them at a young age, which is maybe a little abnormal, at a 16-year-old, like, yeah, no, this is what I want to do. I'm all in. But I feel like it's very obvious if you should go pro or not. If you should go pro, you're probably in the top 200. You're probably winning matches pretty easily, pretty comfortably. And the reality is that is not very common. There's only a handful in kind of each year that can maybe achieve that. There's only so many, like Alexander Zverevs or players like that can just kind of segue seamlessly into the pro tour, especially in the boys. That physically is such a big jump. You see it a little bit more with the junior girls going into women's tennis, that it might be a little bit easier for them. So would my son be loving just to play college tennis, pro tennis right now? Yeah, of course. But, you can't do that when you're not ready, either emotionally or your game's not ready or physically. So it wasn't even a conversation. It was like, dude, you're going to college. If you're in the top 200, let's say, by the time that comes around, then okay, then we'll talk again. But that's very rarely the case. So he knew he was going to go. He wanted to go to a school that had a good chance, had a good reputation of developing as well. So he's only been there like 3 or 4 weeks. So Stanford starts pretty late. So getting back and like getting into that environment has been like for any 18-year-old an adjustment that we just laugh at. He's like, oh my God, I have to write a paper on my first day of class. I'm like, yeah, that's real life fun. So it's pretty fun. I'm so happy for him. He still wants to, pursue his goal of playing pro tennis, but maybe it's in 2 years, maybe it's in 4 years. There's no timetable that everyone has to be pro by 19 or by 20. You can be 22, 23, whatever age that is. We'll support him when it's ready, but he's just not ready right now.
It seemed like going to school worked out pretty good for Ben Shelton.
Exactly. No, there's so many great examples too. That helps a lot these days as well. It was less common to go to college in like the 90s, right? All these players that were successful seemed to go straight to the pro tour. Now you have so many. There was over like 30, I could be wrong, it could have been 40 players at the US Open that had ties to college tennis, that had played there and competed there, whether it was 1 year or 4 years or 5 years with the COVID year. So I think the path for juniors is a little bit there's more options now for them. And there's a lot of great opportunities, a lot of growth you can do in these years while you're in college.
Lindsay, we talk at Pure Athlete about role models. Who was your role model growing up as a tennis player? And also, like, who do you look at now on the men's side and the women's side that you think are great role models for kids in the tennis space?
Yeah. So growing up in the 80s, I was born in 76. So as I was playing tennis, right, it was Chrissy and Martina that were just dominating women's tennis. I didn't play like either one of them. So obviously it was like cheering for them, but it didn't really match up to how like my playing style was. So to be honest, it was in the early 90s when I was already at a pretty high level, at least nationally in the juniors. Monica Seles like came through, and all of a sudden here was this player that was able to bash the ball on both sides, that kind of had this fearless attitude at a young age, taking on Steffi Graf. Like, I couldn't believe it. And she was only a couple years older than I was, and she was achieving like amazing things. And then, believe it or not, it was Jennifer Capriati. We were exactly the same age. We played exactly one junior tournament together, and that was it. She got so good so fast. And here I was watching a 14-year-old who was exactly my age go out there and start dominating women's tennis. Like, those two players gave me the hope and I want to say the drive also, like, okay, maybe I can do this, right? They're awesome. They're my age. Look at them. They really, I thought, gave the tour a lot of fresh life, a lot of excitement with their games as well. So seeing them, it kind of motivated me as well, in kind of really important years, those teenage years. Like, you could really go any way with this, right? I could go to college. A lot of junior girls kind of quit tennis around those ages of like 13 to 17, quit sports in general. So those two motivated me so much, and I was really grateful for them. Now when like I watch, it's the sum of all parts for me. Like, if I'm giving my son someone to really like idolize or emulate, Ben Shelton is definitely one of them, with not only how he got into pro tennis by going to college. He has an amazing family. They've been absolutely phenomenal to not only me, but also my son. He's a huge role model of Jaggers, my son. I love to see stories of people that are treating people great and still being successful. That's super important for me, that my kids see that in whoever they look up to.
So, Lindsay, we've talked a little bit about you as a player. We've talked about you as a mom. I want to talk a minute about coaching, because, you coach Madison Keys. I'm not sure if you've coached anybody else, but you've also coached I still want to say the Fed Cup, but the Billie Jean Cup,
exactly.
The Billie Jean King Cup team, the Olympics team. What have you learned about coaching? What advice do you have to coaches out there about how to get the most out of players?
It's something that I think as a coach you're always striving for, right? That's the part that you always hope to get to, is how do I get the most out of this player or all my players. I was fortunate. It was 1995, so I was 19 years old when Billie Jean King took over that role at that time. So for 10 years, I got to spend all these weeks every year with Billie. And I mean, could you find anyone more inspirational or motivational? It's like crazy. She was so integral to my development, to getting me to believe as well. And I sit there and I find myself trying to like, okay, what would Billie do here? I constantly am like bugging her, texting her and calling her. It's it's a balance maybe I haven't perfected yet. It's a little bit easier when you're with a player all the time in individual coaching, or your kids, or in this instance Madison, because you get to know them better. In this other role, you're only with them like a couple weeks a year, 2, maybe 3 at the most. So that's a little bit more of a challenging role. Then I just feel like, okay, you're managing the week and how are they feeling, where the really fun stuff is actually helping players maybe see a bigger picture, or develop a certain shot, or convince them to kind of go down one certain path. So still trying to find what works best with each player as well is really challenging. Once you get in coaching and you see coaches, that have to do the NBA, the WNBA, or like manage, whatever it is, 12 to 80 players, it's like, wow, it's so tough. I deal with 4 or 5 on a week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how I'm trying to like figure out what works with everybody, and it's a lot.
Speaking of as a coach, now that you're kind of seeing it from a different landscape too, from when you played, what is maybe your biggest concern about youth sports tennis? I know there's so much great stuff out there, but what's one of like your red flags?
It's such a crazy kind of sport to live through. It's one of those sports like, oh, like the parents can't get involved or whatever. You know, it's crazy what happens, right? Everyone talks about like line calls, but we've had like so many instances where players like are changing the score, right? If my son like ever got the score wrong, and it was to his advantage, like, and he's like, it's 30, it's really 15-30, he calls it 30-15. Like I was the one like at 10 years old, like, hey bud, that's not the score. It's 15-30. Like, and he'd be like, oh, okay. And he played one match where it was like 3-2, and the other guy's like, no, I'm up 4-1. And the parents are like sitting there. I'm like, really? So I always feel like you've got to keep up that level of like integrity as well. Like the kids are supposed to figure out how to play, and the kids are supposed to, figure out, some problem solving, but at a certain point it's like, no, it's not fine. We're not going to leave here with that win if this is what transpired for you to achieve that win. I think that there's a lot of kind of too much emphasis on the results and all of the junior ages. There's so many matches like 16 and unders, like honestly, and I would say this to my son all the time, like it doesn't really matter. Like it kind of rocks their world. Yeah. In their 15-year-old world, it's like the biggest deal, but like, it's okay. It's not going to leave a mark.
Yeah.
But getting them to kind of buy into that has always been really tough. Again, if you win, it's great. If you lose, it's terrible. Like that mentality, I can't stand. Like, did you do what you were working on in practice? Did you feel like you competed well? If you didn't, what do you think the problem was? What can you learn? But it takes a certain maturity as well to get to that place, to be able to kind of look at matches in that kind of lens.
So finishing up here, a few more minutes. We appreciate your time, but I want to do a little rapid fire and have a little fun with you. So
Okay.
What is the favorite match that you have ever played in?
My favorite match, funny enough, is one that I lost. I was 17, I think, at the U.S. Open, and back then they only seeded 16, and I was not seeded. I got into a part of the draw where the first 2 rounds I didn't play a seed, and the third round I played, I think she was seeded 15 or 16, a South African woman, Amanda Coetzer. It was the last match I ever played on the field courts, right, on the outside courts. I won that match. That put me in the round of 16 against Gabriella Sabatini. That was like my first big match. We were on back then the grandstand court at the U.S. Open, which at the time was the number 2 court. We played late in the day. I believe it was Sunday, and it was like packed. And that was like, I walked out there like, oh my God, like there's not an empty seat. And there was fans like, chanting for Gabby. There's obviously the American fans for me. I ended up losing that match. I think it was like 6-4 in the third. It was a close 3-setter. And I walked off the court, and my oldest sister just gave me this hug, like, like, is this real? Like, I can't believe like we just experienced that. And yeah, I lost it, but that was like my first taste of, wow, this is like a big crowd. This is maybe what I was like training for all these years to be able to experience. So I always think of that match, like that kind of also changed the trajectory, because I was like, oh yeah, I want to do that again.
Well, I love that because you got me on this next one. It might be the same match, but now you sit at home like this morning. What's the one match you're like, oh God, I wish I could have that match back?
Oh, well, no, 2005 Wimbledon final. I had lost in the final earlier that year at the Australian Open. And then I'd come back from like knee surgery. I'd come back from foot surgery. And like 2005, like I was playing really high level tennis again. And Wimbledon final, up a break in the third. I had match point receiving later in the third, and I ended up losing to Venus. I think it was like 9-7. It was like really long. I don't know if it was like 2:45 or 3 hours. That would be the match. I mean, I didn't do anything like, oh, I wish I had done this differently. But that was the one match where, not the one, but that was one of the few matches where I was like, wow, I played great and I lost. Tough to lose a Grand Slam final having match point, being that close. But that was that. I would, love to say I had 4 majors,
Yeah.
3 I'll take, but I was like so close to getting another one.
What is your favorite venue to play at? And don't worry, if you want to piss off the New Yorkers, it's okay.
No,
You don't have
I
to
was going
worry
to say,
about it.
right, my least favorite was Roland Garros. I was a California girl. I never learned how to play on clay. I kind of managed the French Open, and they didn't love playing there. New York was amazing and energy. It took me a few years to be comfortable playing there. Wimbledon, it's like amazing, right? It's like the Masters. Like it's every player's dream to go out there and get to experience that. My favorite place to play was Australia. And I say that only because it just didn't get as much attention back then. So I felt like you could kind of go down to Australia. It was their summer in January. You're coming off the off season. So mentally you're a little fresher. And like the Aussies like love tennis. They're just like out there. Every court is packed, cheering, like whatever, like drinking beers, having fun out there. So I always felt like the most relaxed at a Grand Slam down under.
2 more for you from me. So I got the first one. Who in today's landscape in women's tennis would you like? I'd love to play her in a final. Like who would be that one player you'd want to play?
Oh man. There's so many Americans right now. They're huge fans of all of them. I mean, I guess I'd have to go Sabalenka just because, I mean, she's been the alpha for the last year or two.
Yeah.
She plays such a big style game, how she competes and how she's able to raise her level. I never loved playing other Americans. So like if right now we've got Goff and Pegula, Keys and Anna Samova. I think I'd like to stay away from all of them.
And my last one, Lindsay, who was for you the most inspirational coach in your tennis career and why?
There's no question, Billie Jean King. Really, I was so fortunate to be on her squads, on her teams. And she gave me this talk that I've spoken about before, but in the 96 Olympics, I had just turned 20. I was seated pretty low. I don't know, like 13, 14, somewhere around there, not expected to win. Was like so happy I was even there. And as I kind of navigated the draw, I was really inspired playing there, loved it. I was going to other events. So it just didn't feel like I had the stress of like playing a tennis tournament where a lot of times I would just go back to my room and kind of chill or rest.
And think about it all night. Yeah.
Way too much, right? You're like thinking like, oh, when am I playing? Who do I playing? I was like, oh, wait, do we get tickets to like men's volleyball? Like, let's go. Like, and we're going all over. So I found myself in the final. I had the day off the day before and was sitting there with Billie, but there's a bunch of people around and someone said something to me about the final. And my comment was like, can you believe it? Like, no matter what, I'm going to leave here tomorrow with a medal. And like a couple minutes later, Billie's like, can I talk to you over there? So that started like an hour conversation of like, why would you lower your expectations like this? Why would you try and downplay this? Like, are you like, and basically telling me like, you got to start embracing this. Like, no, don't try and lessen the pressure. Like, oh, no matter what, it's been great. Like, you need to go after this with a different mindset. getting the silver medal, yeah, that might happen, but that's not what we're going for tomorrow. Like, you've got to be willing to maybe put it more on the line. It was very kind of complex, and it was a lot for me to handle because constantly I was trying to like take pressure off myself. Like, oh, it's okay, I'm still 9 in the world, or oh, it's okay, I got to the round of 16 here. And she was like the first one to confront me and was like, that's your defense mechanism and that's not going to work. And I'm not going to let you go into it with that. So I always credit her with just being willing to like get in my face about this. And we are so close now, even all these years later. Got to spend, 10 years with her or so on the court and helping me. So I always feel like also if I didn't have her in my corner, I wouldn't have had the courage to maybe go after some of the bigger titles that I got.
I know Britt's got a couple questions left. I just got one light question for you. Have you ever been, because I've asked this of other gold medal winners, have you ever been at a dinner party where they don't know who you are, they don't know your background, and someone's being a little bit egotistical, and you just got that gold medal kind of in your, feels not really physically in your pocket, but you kind of got it mentally in your pocket. Have you ever had to kind of pull out the gold medal just to kind of shut them up?
No,
oh, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I keep my mouth shut quite often. I had parents either in youth sports talk about like their kids and I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Or like how the sports work, I'm like, okay. Especially like, and this sounds super weird, but I find it more like if I'm sitting down, like if I stand up and they're like, wow, she's 6'3", and like, oh, maybe she played a sport or something. But like, there's so many times where I keep my mouth shut, like, oh my gosh, can you believe what this guy's saying or this woman's saying? Like,
typically a guy, probably.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
I've got like all my kids play different sports. So I feel like we see it like all over the place in all these different sports. And it's just like, okay. And then you get it back later. But no, I've never pulled it out. Like, to be honest, like we couldn't find my gold medal for like 6 years. Like we moved a few times and my husband was so mad at my mom. My mom found it and then my husband was like, okay, this is not happening again. So I don't have like my trophies out around my house. There's no trophies. There's no pictures of me. Like at a certain point, I just made this conscious decision. Like this is like, we live for our kids now and they don't need to like see what mom did. We talk about it and they go to tennis tournaments at times. So they hear about it, but I don't want their friends to come over and be like, dude, why is there a shrine of your mom? Like over there in the corner. Like, so it's all kind of like very low key here. And probably most of their friends don't have any idea what I did or do at all.
That's
very
super,
cool.
Super admirable. Yeah.
I gotta go hide my trophies now, my Little League trophies.
I'm like super embarrassed by it as well. It's like I need to probably go to therapy for that also. So who knows?
I've got 2 more tennis questions for you, and one of them you just mentioned Anisimova. And we talk a lot on this show about resilience and kids developing mental toughness. And, she just went through, and, whether you're a tennis fan or not, a lot of people watch Wimbledon. She goes to Wimbledon finals, biggest stage ever, loses 0-0, which many people would never recover from. And comes back, gets to the finals of the U.S. Open, loses again. And which just to get there, I think is unbelievably admirable. And now she just won the China Open. Can you talk about? I mean, that's amazing to me. Can you talk about that? You know her, I'm sure. What are your thoughts on that?
Right now in America for women's tennis, men's tennis as well, we have so many players that are doing well and so many different personalities. And honestly, Amanda's amazing. I first met her when she was 15, when she was playing some of the junior slams, spent some time with her when she was 16 and 17. So could not be more proud of her for so many reasons. First of all, she lost her dad at 18 years old, 1 week before the U.S. Open. And her dad was young. It really rocked her world for a long time, trying and play with tennis with someone who was so instrumental in getting her there. Every player's Well, my biggest like nightmare would have been like, I'm going to lose a big match 0-0 and not win a game. Like every player kind of fears that, whether they audibilize it or not. And she literally lived it in real time. I mean, I remember watching that like, oh man, she just needs to get on the board here. And then this could change. And it just kept spiraling. She was overwhelmed by the occasion, which happens. I think a lot of players that haven't experienced making a run to the final weekend of a major are unaware of maybe everything it takes out of you, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally. It's a long process to then be able to be close to 100% to compete on the weekends. Honestly, what some of the dominant players have learned how to master. Everyone on the team knows their spot. If you're on Team Alcaraz, Team Federer, Team Nadal, Team Djokovic, everyone knew how they wanted these 3 weeks to go, the week before and the 2 weeks. And Amanda, her gas tank was on empty in that final. To then have the resilience to come back and reach another final, and oh, by the way, beat the woman who beat her love and love. The other thing Amanda did a couple of years ago is, we talked about this earlier, is she took a break. She was completely overwhelmed, burnt out, unhappy playing pro tennis. And she kind of had the courage to walk away for 5-6 months. And she went back to school. She went to in-person college. She was like, hey, I'm going to live my life how I want to live it. Wanted to come back to tennis and is now achieving great things. I love that she was able to do that for herself. A Grand Slam title's coming. She keeps like getting, obviously she's had 2 finals now, but top 4 in the world. Like, I cannot wait for that moment for her. That most likely will happen next year, if not in the next 2 years.
Really, really, really cool story. Along the lines of coaching, tennis is unique in that juniors can't get any coaching during a match. And that used to be, throughout all levels. And now, pro players can get coached during their match. What are your thoughts on that? There's arguments on both sides, but it's interesting to me that young kids, when they most need a little bit of coaching, can't get coaching.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on all of that.
My favorite thing in youth tennis is probably junior team tennis, where you're out there with a team and you have a coach. I think tennis would get more popular and more players would stay with it if at those young ages we had more of the team events. There's only a certain percentage of kids that literally want to be out there by themselves at 9 or 10 or 11 and like fighting out there. The team tennis concept, you have a coach that can come around and kind of help manage situations. They have teammates, they're cheering for each other. I really hope that something is looked at to make maybe all events in 10 and unders or whatever that age is more team friendly and more coaching. So much of tennis is learning how you go. And at the young ages, right, it's like, how do I hold a racket? How do I get this ball to go over the net and in the court? Then you got to kind of master a really complex scoring system, where you stand, where this goes, what happens next. Like, it's a lot for anyone to kind of process. So I always think that there should be someone out there helping the kids. It's less about like forehands cross court than it is like, okay, now the second point, you stand here, let's get them to play the right way. And then at a certain point, then it becomes more about X's and O's. But a lot of times for players, that's not till really your mid-teens. For a small percentage, it happens younger for those elite 12 and under players or 14 and under players. In pro tennis, I've loved the addition of the subtle coaching. It was kind of happening anyways, where coaches were, either talking really, softly to their players or giving signals or whatever. So it's like, okay, let's just
rip the Band-Aid off.
Make it legal. Totally. So I don't know. I don't mind it. There's some traditionalists that think it's terrible. I like the help. I think it gives new context. It puts a little bit more pressure on the coaches to really kind of know their stuff and help their players through it. But the biggest thing here in this country is, how do we get more kids playing? How do we get more kids not quitting at a certain age? And so hopefully something can be done to make it more friendly, make it more fun for maybe the players that do want to have more of a team aspect. And let's just let the players go play, have some fun, have some pizza or whatever after, and not worry about like the bad drive home when they lose or get them all upset about, and they never want to play again.
Well, I could ask you a zillion more questions, but we've kept her a long time, Jeff.
I thank you. And I love how you ended there, because truly it is so true. We talk about it, kids quitting if they're not having fun. And we talk on this show a lot, Lindsay, about let the kids continue to develop a passion and a love for the game. And if they do that, most of the time they're going to want to work. They're going to want to get better.
Yeah.
And then you see where it's at. So we appreciate you, what you stand for, all you've done for tennis and women's sports. You know, I got 2 daughters myself. One plays tennis, so we're having a lot of fun, and just again appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more videos from us right here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing. Follow us on social media at Pure Athlete Inc. for even more content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.